So today I would like to give an oral presentation of an excerpt from the novel From This Earth, My Brother. And I believe the novel was released in 1971 and was written by the author Kofi Abuner. And Kofi Abuner was this very great author and poet who was very good at combining his poetry with fiction. And with that, he's drawing these very beautiful pictures with these words. And was very good at depicting Africa doing this decolonization. Yes. And I would say the genre of the novel is a combination of fiction and allegory. And allegory is also some type of poetry. Yes. And the novel takes place in Ghana during this colonization of the Gold Coast, and mainly revolves about the education and school system in Ghana, but also revolves about what I would say was the protagonist, who's called Mr. Smith, who's this inspector of schools. He has to go out and inspect schools and check up on the teaching environment and see if the teachers are good enough to doing their job, if that makes sense. Yes. So the story is set in 1936 at the Dean Primary School, and we hear that it is not a very peculiar school, which means it's a very normal school. It's how this is like this stereotypical school in Ghana, and it is still combined with a church, which means all of their education revolves about this what's called a catechism, which has its origin from the Catholic Church, which means they have to learn about this Catholic belief and their traditions. And there are some problems with this, because some of the students are Catholic or Christians and they know the answers to what the teachers may ask them, but many of these other students are what's called pagans, I think it's pronounced, and this means that it's very typically for small villages to have their own small religion, and that's what you are when you are a pagan. You have your own gods you sacrifice to. You usually have many gods, so they don't know the answers to these questions. And the teachers are not very pedagogic. They use names and punishments to in relation to the teaching. And for instance, if a pupil cannot answer a question, they will call them names such as silly goat or stupid cow, which is not very pedagogic if you ask me. And so one day, a man called Mr. Smith, who is, as stated before, an inspector of schools. He has to go out and inspect the environment at the school. He comes out and has to inspect the teaching. And he comes from England. He's just graduated from Cambridge University. And the headmaster of the school has prepared this particular class with a teacher who's very reliable. He's been there for a long time. He knows what he's doing. He knows discipline. He's just the way to go. And Mr. Smith, he wishes to see class 4. And in class 4, the teacher, Mr. Adama, he is new. He's described as a boy. He do not know this, what's it called? This discipline. And he does not teach catechism. He teaches biology. He is described how he teaches about the malaria disease and the mosquitoes who carries it, which is also important for the kids to know, but it's just not what that image the school wants to represent. And it just goes very bad. It goes very badly. The kids are very intimidated by this man, Mr. Smith, who is writing notes down. They won't raise their hands when Mr. Adama, which is the teacher's name, when he asks a question. So it just goes very badly. And so afterwards, we hear how the kids are punished even more. They, if you haven't been to church service for, what was it, 3 weeks, you have to sit in the back of the class with the native kids, and they are just getting beat all the time. That's not good. And they're tightening up the rules, and we hear how some of the smaller kids, they're pissing their pants, and you get the vibe. And then we fast forward to 1940, to what's called the Empire Day, and it's where all the kids from the primary school, they meet on this Victory Park, and they are celebrating this Queen Victoria's birthday, I think, and they are singing the former national anthem of Britain, Rule Britannia, and many other patriotic songs, and they are just having a great time. Which brings me further. I would like to talk a bit more about this Empire Day, because in my personal opinion, I think the British Empire using this Empire Day to brainwash these young pupils, because they're such a vulnerable age. They are such an easy target to imprint on there, or they can manipulate them to think that this empire thing is so great. They are an easy target. And when you are in that age, I remember when I was in that age, you are so scared of authorities, or you respect them so much. So what the authorities say is law. So you just do what they say and you believe what they say. So when the authorities say that the empire is great, they believe them. We hear how they are singing Rule Britannia, which was the former national anthem of Britain, I believe. And we how they love to sing that also among other patriotic songs, and they feel like they are a part of this Britain Empire. They describe themselves as Britons, and they sing how they will never, never, never be slaves. But I think there's an interesting contrast between that, and we hear how the school, the Dean Primary School, wishes to expand. They want to make another part of the school where the senior students can be, and we hear how it was finished very fast because all the kids helped. And I just personally think it's weird that when you're going to school, you're there to get an education. You're not there to build another part or another floor for the school. And I think you can compare that to slavery, because I believe that it wasn't, you didn't have a choice. You had to build this floor. And I said before, I think you compare that to slavery. So I think that was an interesting contrast. Another thing I thought was interesting, and I thought was worth a mention, is this contrast between Mr. Smith and these other native teachers and the head of school, which have these very special last names, such as Adama or Atbunsa. You can almost hear that they are native people. And Mr. Smith is in equivalent to John Doe, which is a person without a face. It's just a stereotypical Englishman. I think he shall symbolize or represent. So we see how he comes with all the authority. He's fresh out of Cambridge, which is a very prestigious education, I believe, and he comes to Africa, to Ghana. And he describes that, I'll just find it in the text, he describes how he doesn't get the concept of the white man's burden, because to him it's vague and undefined. And the white man's burden is this description, or is a poem, which describes that how the Britain are doing the world a favor by going out and colonizing the world and teaching them how to rule their societies. And there is a passage where the author, what was it called? Rudyard Kipling is describing the savage wars of peace, which is this very good description of how the people they have this way of living life. And then the Britons comes and put down the flag and says, now we will teach you how to live. And this description of the war between the Britons and the native people where they are colonizing. Yes, and to get back on track, he described that it is vague, undefined, because for him, his authority or his position in the British land or British area, he is a British man, and when he comes to Africa, he arrives to a nice house, a good pay, and he arrives on the top. He describes himself how he arrives on top, and therefore the white burden to him is very vague and undefined, because for him it's not a burden, it's just a way of living the best life he can possibly have. And even though he is young, he has this authority and comes with this knowledge, and seeing how he will not even shake Mr. Agbonsas, who is, in his opinion, a co-equal to him. He will not even shake his hand because he thinks he has so much authority over him. And I think it could symbolize this hierarchy between the colonized areas and the Great Britain, because what can you say? It's just, even though they don't want to be a hierarchy, they're still the top, and they're there to be an authority, to teach them how to live. And I just think that Mr. Smith could symbolize that in the text.